You're listening to Catalyst for Change, and my name is Jessica Huckabee, your host. I started this podcast to learn what makes people resilient after challenging events and how they've used those series of events as a catalyst for change in their life. You'll hear stories of resiliency and strength, so get ready, sit back, and be prepared to be inspired. Today, my guest is Ali, and he is just such an inspiration to speak to. He's a refugee that left Eritrea, East Africa, to go to Sudan, and then eventually Egypt and on to America. He's a success story of someone who has been in a refugee camp, who has survived different things in his life and had to overcome different catalysts that made him who he is today. And he's just a real inspiration. So I look forward to having you hear this episode. Thank you, Ali, for talking with me today on my podcast, Catalyst for Change Stories. Can you tell me what has been a catalyst event in your life that really helped you grow?
Thank you for having me, and it's my pleasure to be with you. So I left my home country, Eritrea, in East Africa when I was about like 14, turning to 15, and I went to Sudan. I crossed the border walking, and then I also went to Egypt. So at this point, I became an asylum seeker to become a refugee, like an unaccompanied minor. So not having my parents or role models or adults in my life at that point of time just made me figure out things by myself. I
Yeah.
was living in an environment that I didn't know the language, I didn't know people like I mentioned earlier. I didn't know the ins and outs of life. So I was in front of like reality. For me, it was like, okay, I'm here right now. It doesn't matter, I'm 15, I'm 16 or 17. But at this time, I am 15 and I will have to deal with all these things that I put myself into because that's my decision that I made to leave my home country because I did not want to be conscripted into military since the government back home will take young adults right before they graduate high school and put them in the military. So the time in Sudan and spending time in Egypt as a refugee just made me face this world with all its nice things and bad things. Um, and I struggled at times, but I found people who I met in Egypt who became my friends. I still speak with them to this day. Some of them are from the United States, some of them are from some parts of Europe, and some of them are from Egypt. So I just built my own network as a refugee, and I still talk to these people. So this journey made me who I am today.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So when you were 14, 15 years old, you started off on your journey by foot to escape being drafted into the military, basically, when you were, because you knew when you graduated high school, that's what was going to happen, or right before you graduated high school, that was what was going to happen. And so can you tell me about that journey and what happened along the way on your trip to asylum seeking in Egypt?
Um, the difficult part was my journey from Eritrea, my home country, to Sudan, because that was like a trip that I had no clue. I went there with two people that I met, um, and it was walking during the night and hiding during the day because of fear from being caught by the border patrol.
Yeah.
Um, and then once we entered the border of Sudan, my friends and I decided to sleep. We usually didn't sleep during the night, but that night, we said, okay, we can see the border, we can see the lights of the town that we are approaching, so now we can rest. That was like kind of like a not smart decision that we made. So we slept, the border patrol from Sudan saw us, and they were like, okay, let's just let them sleep there. And then they came in the morning while we were sleeping, and they got us, and they were like, just like threatening us, that they were like saying, okay, you guys gonna be deported, gonna go back to your home country. But luckily, we were like very fortunate. Um, People from the United Nations Organization for Refugees, the UNHCR, came and they made sure that we were not deported. So they took us from them and they put us in a refugee camp.
Oh my
And since
goodness.
there was like human trafficking in there, from the refugee camp, I decided to go to Egypt with other people as well. So
Okay.
the
Yeah.
journey, yeah, so the journey from Sudan, from my home country to Sudan was more scary, I would say. But that doesn't mean like the journey from Sudan was easier to Egypt. They were like very similar, but the more scary one was from my home country um, to Sudan, because I was facing being deported, and that was like very dangerous and risky.
And what would have happened if you were deported to your home country?
So I was living with my mom. My dad passed away years before. So at
Oh,
that point, they could have arrested my mom,
oh,
saying like, "Why would you send him?" And then can be like in jail until this day, maybe like killed,
yeah.
maybe like they put you like in military prison. So yeah.
Okay. So the most dangerous part of your journey was from your home country to Sudan, because if you were caught, you could have been put in a military prison. Your mom would have went to jail, and you could have eventually ended up dying from being in that prison. It sounds like. So that was really dangerous. Now, how is your mom today now that you've left?
Uh, she's doing very well. I spoke with her when I arrived in Egypt after a couple of months, because I didn't even tell her that I was leaving. I did not tell nobody, because if the rumors go around, they might get you
Yeah.
before you even leave. So I was just trying to be very secretive until I get to where I want to be. So
Yeah.
she didn't know until I was in Egypt. So that's when I told her like, hey, I am safe. I made it to this place, and now she's doing very well.
Okay, so they haven't done anything to her because you left, it sounds like.
Yes, because they didn't really get me and also didn't know my place.
Yeah.
And now it's been like years. So yeah,
Okay, so she's safe and
yeah,
secure in her home. Oh, good.
yes.
Good. That's good to hear. Now tell me about that journey from Sudan to Egypt and what that was like for you.
Yeah. So it goes from like the from Sudan to Egypt. It's like a desert. But I was lucky to get a ride because of the people who I met in there. They had money. I didn't have money. I had no one to help me. So they were like very kind to me, and they helped me get in the car with them. And then when you get reach like a certain point before the border, you will have to get out of the car and walk a long distance as well. But it
Okay.
was not as scary as it was the first one. But yeah.
Okay, so that part of your journey wasn't as scary. And it sounds like you met some really nice people to help you and give you a ride for most of the way. Now,
Mhm.
are those the people you mentioned you're still in contact with?
No, I don't have any contact with these people that I had my journey with. I don't even know where they are at this point. Uh, because I didn't have any social media. I didn't have anything at that
Yeah.
time in my life. The people that I mentioned that I met in Egypt, they were like working for refugee programs, and they
Okay.
became my friends because I was taking classes in there and trying to uh, make my life through. But so I met them there, and I still talk to them.
Okay. So, so those people, so the people that you met in Egypt. Now, what did you do once you got to Egypt? Where were you able to stay, and what was that like when you got there?
So when you get to Egypt, you will have to go to the UNHCR office, which is the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and seek asylum. And it takes about a couple of months, weeks, depends on what your case looks like. And since I was a minor, things were like very uh, quick for me. I was
Mm.
an unaccompanied minor, so I was able to get my refugee status in about like 3 months, and then I was able to get financial support so that I can get like a place. They don't have refugee camps in Egypt. All you have to do is find people that you will meet through, like whether it's like the refugee programs or school classes,
Yeah.
and figure out like where to live. So there was like a community from my home country who lived there before me. So I went there to like a neighborhood, and through the money, that financial assistance that I was getting for housing from the UN office,
Yeah.
I was able to get an apartment with people from my community, and that's where I stayed.
Okay, so you went to a neighbor, you all you had to do is go, it sounds simpler than I'm sure it was. So you went to a neighborhood where you knew your country, your fellow country people were living, and you were able to make friends and ask questions about, things that you needed to do in order to establish yourself in Egypt, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's first of all, like you have to figure out like who to ask, because coming through all this journey and struggles, it's kind of hard to trust people.
Yeah.
So you will have to figure out like people who got your back, and you go from there.
Wow. So you had to figure out who to trust, because along your journey, there must have been a lot of people that you couldn't trust. And being able to
Hmm.
determine that and have that instinct of who to trust,
Yes.
or just being, that's amazing. So
Mhm.
you were either very lucky or you have very good instincts, it sounds like.
I would say like both. Yeah.
Yeah, both. Oh my goodness. That is amazing. And so you were able to establish yourself in Egypt. You were able to go to some type of schooling, right? And start learning a language other than the one from your home country. Is that correct?
Yeah. So like being a refugee in Egypt right now, I follow like every place that I've been through. I follow like the structure of the society. I'm like very interested in things. Like I look up things, and I see like social media, how they are doing the refugee community and all these things.
Yeah.
At that point when I came, it was kind of hard to go to like a school, like whether it's high school or elementary, because of like funding and documents and all these issues.
Yeah.
Right now, it looks a little bit better because the UN is putting some efforts through worldwide organizations to make sure that refugee kids go to school in there. But at my time, it was kind of hard. So what I did was was just going for English language classes, and I took all the classes and I finished. That doesn't mean like my English was perfect, but it was like an average for someone who came from uh,
Yeah.
another country whose English is not his first language. So I finished that, and then I was like, okay, to the person who was in charge, who is now my one of my best friends. I was like, so I finished it now. Where will I go? Like I don't want to sit in the streets. So she told me, like she asked me if I can intern with her
Okay.
in the program, and I said okay. So I interned. They were like giving me like some sort of like financial assistance so that I can get myself around, like for transportation and things like that. And after my internship, I was hired with them. It was a non-profit organization called Saint Andrews in Cairo, Egypt. And through all this journey, I was still following my refugee status and trying to figure out to move out of Egypt, like different ways. And that's how I got to the US.
Okay. So it sounds, so that intern program was for the English language classes.
Yes, like program English. Yeah, it was.
English speaking program, and you were
Yeah.
able to gain an internship there with St. Andrews, a nonprofit
Uh-huh.
in Egypt. And once you were hired on, you had more opportunities that opened up for you, and you were able to look at different areas in the world that might be a good fit to be able to move to. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So what brought you to Michigan, Minnesota is where you're living?
Michigan.
Michigan. Okay. How did you end up getting to Michigan?
The funny thing is, I was never like, it was never in my mind to come to the United States. I have never thought about it.
Yeah.
Uh, I was hoping to go to Canada because I have my cousin who lives there, and I was in touch with her until like maybe like 2 weeks before they told me I was going to the United States,
Okay.
because I was unaccompanied minor. So I'm assuming that they didn't have like foster care programs like the US in Canada.
Yeah.
So they wanted me to be successful. So they brought me here. So the whole story is that if you are a refugee, you don't decide where to go. The UN agency that has your case will make sure like they give your case to different embassies who accept who have like refugee programs through resettlement programs. So they will give yours to different embassies, and then the embassy will look at your profile, your background, and they will be like, okay, we want this guy or this lady.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know I was going to the United States until like for 3 days from before I came to the US.
Oh, wow. So you didn't know, you thought you were going to go to Canada, or you were hoping to go to Canada because you have a cousin that
That's
lives
correct.
there. And the
Correct.
UN is actually the one that decides where you go. And the way that they do that is giving your case to different embassies. And it sounds like since you were hired by St. Andrews and they knew that you spoke English well enough to get by, and you were helping other people in English language learning, that it sounds like the US really looked kindly on that and said, this person really wants to achieve and make something of himself, so we want him, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah. They when they have these different interviews, they have like 3 interviews in the UN agency before they send your file. So they will ask you all about like your ambitions, what your plans are, what you're trying to accomplish, and all these good things that good like looks good in telling stories, but it can be harder in real life. So I was just telling them like I want to pursue my education, I want to go to college, I want to be this and that,
Yeah.
and they were like okay, and I'm still going to school and all these things that I was telling them.
Yeah.
um, they they sent my case to different embassies, and the US called me through an organization called IOM. It's the International Organization for Migration, and that's how I started my process to come to the US.
Wow. Okay, so how was it when you first got to Michigan?
I actually did not know I was coming to Michigan until I got in the plane.
Okay. Oh, wow. So you
Yeah,
had
they
no
didn't.
idea. You got
Yeah,
on the plane and you're like, okay, well, I hope I'm going to Canada, but the plane was
and
actually
no,
headed to.
actually, I knew I was going to the US, but I didn't know what city, what state.
Oh,
I didn't
gotcha.
even know in Michigan. I never heard of the state of Michigan
Okay, so you
before.
didn't know much about Michigan yet. And
Nothing. Yeah.
yeah, okay, so what was it like when you got to the United States, to Michigan? That must have been a different, like
Yeah, it
very
was.
different.
Yeah, so I came on November 20th, 2014, 2 days before Thanksgiving, and was snowing, and I had never saw snow before in my life. Kind of
Wow.
like freaking out.
Yeah.
But I was like almost turning 18, so they were trying to get me to high school before I turned 18. So I went to school the next day and got signed up, and I sat in class, was in class for like 2 or 3 classes, and then I went out and I got my social security and all these things. But it was kind of scary. I was in the middle of nowhere in a small town called Bath, Bath. So I went there for about like 6 months to high school, and then I moved out of my placement to a different house in Lansing, Michigan, the capital. And I stayed there for about a year. I finished high school there, and then I got accepted to Western Michigan University to pursue
Okay.
my college degree, and I was in the City Scholars program. That's a program that helps kids who've been through the foster care program.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're in Lansing, Michigan still, it sounds like. And are you
I'm
still in
I'm in Grand Rapids right
Grand
now.
Rapids? You're in Grand Rapids now. So did you finish your schooling at Western Michigan?
Yeah, I got my bachelor's degree.
What did you get your bachelor's in?
I studied international politics.
Ah, that really is a good fit for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's a area that I'm interested in. So I studied a lot about like uh, Chinese politics. I studied a lot about Sub-Saharan African politics, uh, Russian politics, and also Central Asian politics. That these are my focus.
Oh, okay. So what are you doing now? Now that you've graduated and you have your bachelor's in international politics, that's just great things to know as a citizen of the world, the degree that you have.
So the time I graduated, I would say like I was outstanding. It was the only first semester that I did not make the dean's list in my school.
Yeah,
The rest of the semesters until I graduated, I made the dean's list. The first semester I was just trying to figure out how things work, but after that I was always top of my grades. I was always on the dean's list. When I graduated with a 3.78 GPA, and
yeah,
I was the presidential scholar for Western Michigan from the political science department. Um, when I graduated, which was on in April 2020.
oh, good.
So by the time I graduated, Corona was like destroying the entire world. You know, like the
Yeah,
COVID-19 was like raging,
yeah,
and I want to go to grad school, but I don't want to do anything virtual online schooling. That's not my thing.
yeah.
So I just stepped away, and right now, until everything goes back to normal, hopefully soon, I am working for a nonprofit organization here in Grand Rapids. I help unaccompanied minors, just the same place that I was in a couple of years ago. So I'm working as a youth specialist. I help these young people who come from different countries, um, help them with whatever they need to become successful, like from like applying for jobs, taking them to school, take them if they need groceries, take them to look for places if they are moved when they graduate from the program, like help them like apply for apartments and all these things. So I don't want them to miss on things that I missed on. So I'm working with like unaccompanied minors right now.
That's wonderful. And what a good fit. I bet you're able to be a really good mentor because you know all the difficulties or a lot of the difficulties these unaccompanied minors must be facing. And it sounds like they're from the same area that you're from, or are they from all over the world, the unaccompanied minors?
Yeah, like most of them are from the same area,
Yeah.
but some of the guys come from like Central America, some other countries. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So you are really giving back right after college. You know,
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm doing my best.
That's wonderful. We need more people like you to share their experience and share their knowledge, of things that they've went through to help
Thank
others
you.
that are coming up after them. So that's wonderful. That's one of the best things that you can do right now. And it sounds like you have a really promising career ahead of you because you're learning all of those things. You've already learned about international politics with, specializing in Chinese politics, sub-Saharan African politics, Russian politics, Central Asia politics. And now, you're putting yourself in a position to really succeed in your master's program. and that volunteer work, or the work that you're doing as a youth specialist, helping people with those life skills that they need and to get established, is really going to look good on that master's program application. So, you're doing really, really great things. I'm really, just really impressed by your experience and your background. Um, yeah. So tell me, what are your plans, and how are you planning for the future, since coronavirus will be hopefully ending soon? Hopefully we'll be getting all vaccinated in the next several months.
Um, so um, in the summer of 2019, I think, I was in Washington D.C. like about for like 3 months. I did internship with a program called the Fund for American Studies, um, and I was interning for a nonprofit organization as an advocate, translator, uh, and I was going to school there for the summer at George Mason University. So me doing that was getting prepared to live in DC, find a career, find a life there.
Yeah.
But I haven't moved there because of what's going on right now. I'm just trying to figure out. I want to be stable before I go there because I
Yeah.
don't know, things are not like they used to be, you know?
Yeah.
So I plan to go to school for my master's. I'm trying to study security policy so that I can get into my end goal is go into diplomacy with my degree and hopefully with the master's degree that I get. So I want to
Okay.
be like yeah, into diplomacy.
So you plan to go to your master's program possibly at George Mason University, but somewhere in Washington, D.C., so you can get into
Well,
security policy and diplomacy.
yeah, I'm planning to go into George Washington for my master's actually. George
Ah,
Washington
okay.
University. Yeah.
Okay. And so these are skills that you're telling the folks that are, unaccompanied minors now, when they're, trying to get through high school, establish themselves, and you're showing them the pathway forward, what you've done, and mentoring them basically and what they want to accomplish, it sounds like.
Yeah, they actually look at me like because I tell them like, hey, I was just like you 5 years ago. I went to high school. You might not like the rules, how things work, or you might get frustrated because your documents take time and all
Yeah.
these things. But you have to look at the light, the end of the tunnel, because one day it's gonna come that you're gonna say, oh, I remember what Ali told me because I've been through that. So I'm not gonna tell you that it's easy, but you can overcome that. So I just try to become like a good example, uh, a responsible citizen,
Yeah.
make sure they don't do anything that risk their immigration status, like just become, like I said, a good citizen, like do what you're supposed to do and avoid getting in trouble. Go to your school, get a job, find a safe place to live when you finish the program,
Yeah.
and do your best to go to college. But doesn't mean like college is for everyone. If you don't think you can make it to college, learn something that's gonna be useful for you for the future.
Now, so throughout your journey, you've had a really interesting life journey, starting from when you were pretty young, an adolescence. What was the biggest challenge in your journey so far?
um the biggest challenge for me was coming to college was kind of hard because yes, I do speak English, but my English was not like the level of English that's gonna get me through college. And I chose field of study that was requiring a lot of writing. Like
Yeah.
we did a lot of writing. So through the Cedar Scholars Program, because I had a campus coach, uh, her name is Keila Whitaker. She now lives in Maryland. And the whole program, like they really helped me when I struggled in my math. They will get me a math tutor where if I needed anything else, um, they will support me in every way possible, including my internship, because they helped me like financially. They assisted me so that I can make it through my internship, because it was like really expensive one to stay in DC for about 3 months, pay rent, food, transportation, and all these things.
Yeah.
But I also had organizations on campus that I was part of. So I have people when I was struggling who were there for me uh, through my college time. I always reached out to them, and whenever if I don't reach out to them, they will text me or call me. So these were like times that I was struggling, and I think they like being a college student, English is your second language, trying to figure out things. You are in a university with about like almost 30,000 people, trying to just get through college, kind of struggle. But I made it, and I made it like very successfully because I had people. Because someone by himself or by herself is impossible to make it. Like everything we do in life, we have people who have positive uh, effects on us. So those people who were like supporting me in school, and also through the organizations, like the student organizations that I was part of, helped me go like overcome the struggles that I had.
So college was a big challenge for you. So getting through, you learned English, it sounds like when you were 14 or 15. And so
Mm-hmm.
learning it at, being a little bit older when you learned English is a little bit more challenging, but you were able to do it. Your English sounds really, really good to me, by the way. But yeah, I
Thank
can
you.
understand how writing would be very difficult if you're trying to understand the grammar. Even for me, sometimes, English speaker, native English speaker, sometimes you have to think a little bit before you write. So that
Yeah.
is very challenging, I bet, as a second language. Um, yeah. So what would you tell people that are going through that same immigration journey and that same, trying to get through college, and what would you tell them? What advice?
Um, yeah, so my advice is, first of all, when you come as a refugee status in the United States, like from other countries, whether it's like from my own community or other communities, just know to like be patient, because it's a process. We live like in a very big country, that things take time. I didn't know that. People used to tell me, but I was like, nah, not with me. I was gonna get my things on time. I
Yeah.
got my things on a little bit late, but like I said, it takes time, so it needs a lot of patience. While you doing like waiting for these things, don't just sit around and wait. Do something, whether it's like um, be part of like uh, organizations in the community, like whether it's volunteering, whether like it's just getting like building your own network. And when you go to college, no, it's not easy, because this is a journey that you decided to take. And going to college, like I said, is very like challenging do things to do. The language also, like uh, being in a classroom with like hundreds of people, and also being in a classroom with people from different countries, different cultures, different states in this country. So you need to be open-minded, because you're gonna see things that are not accepted in your home country or in your society. So you will need to be accepting, you need to be like tolerant, because this country is built on these values. And you just have to be to resemble like good values, good morals, and be a good example for whoever will come after you, because the journey that you started is not all about you. There were people who came before you, who laid the ground for you to become who you are. And also you need to take that in mind, and make sure like you become the best you can, so that the people who come after you will look up to you and do like similar things and better things in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And yeah, that process, it definitely you need a lot of patience for the immigration process because it does take a while. But sounds like, volunteering or establishing your connections and, giving back to the community that you live in is really important to, you know, while you're waiting to have that patience. And now
Yeah.
tell me, is there one thing that you do every day that keeps you in the right mindset? It sounds like you have a really positive outlook and it's really brought you far in life. How do you maintain that?
I don't know if there is like exactly one thing, but I like to just stay positive. There are like moments of ups and downs, but I like to stay very positive and connect with people. And just I like to smile a lot. So just smiling in times of hardship will give you like hope. So yeah, I listen to music. A spiritual person, so I pray. Um, yeah, I hang out with friends.
Okay.
These things get me through, like play video games and things like that.
Yeah. So just smiling a lot, even if you're going through hard times, because that changes something in you and it makes others
Hmm.
around you more kind. And you feel that that's really, I think there's been research about that, just keeping a smile and a positive outlook when you're going through hard times is really important. And you did
Yeah.
really good at connecting with people. You are just your personality, it seems like, is really good with connecting with people and finding those resources. And it seems like by connecting with people, you were able to, move farther in the process or get through those hard times. So that's really important, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, someone might say, okay, I'm gonna make it by myself, and I will tell them that you're wrong. You might make it, but you're not gonna get the best out of things
Yeah.
because building connections is very important. Like when you are in college, you build connections with professors, you build connections with students, you build connections with people who work in organizations or in the university as a whole. And if you trying to apply for your master's, you're gonna reach out because you're gonna need recommendation letters and all these things
Yeah.
for your master's application.
Yeah.
Because you made that connection, your teachers, your professors will know you who you are as a person, and they're gonna say what you reflect with them. So, and even if you apply for a job, when they ask you for recommendation letters, you gonna reach out to people. So never underestimate the value of networking and like connecting with people, because even so, if I'm studying politics, if I don't find someone who is in politics, I can connect with someone who studied business, because that somebody who studied business, I'm positive they have somebody who they know works in politics. So they will connect you through their own network, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
it's a never ending network, I would say,
Yeah. No, that's
once
really
you start it.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really important, that network. Now, is there anything that we may not have covered that you want to make sure to mention?
Um, Not really about myself, but one thing I would say is this country is going through a lot of tension these days. We saw a lot of things happening, starting with the corona, with like the protests and all these things, and now with all the things that happened in DC. Here we had it in Lansing, Michigan. I would just say like, hopefully people will like remain calm and see like the better side of what's coming, because this country been through a lot of things. And for me, yes, I didn't know a lot of history, but I'm trying to educate myself. But it's very important that we stay like civil, you know, be tolerant to one another and love one another, because using like an enemy might come and use our differences, our division, and use it against us. So it's very important that we stay united and be loving to each other and caring, look out for one another. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really good words of wisdom. Just because we're different doesn't mean we can't get along. There's always a common thread between two very polar opposite people. There's always a common thread that we can find, it sounds like, is what you're
Correct.
saying.
Very
Well,
true. Yep.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ali. I really appreciate talking to you. And it's just, you've taught me so much during our call, and I know the listeners will agree.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Catalyst for Change, and my name is Jessica Huckabee, your host. Join us next week for another story of resiliency. And please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and feel free to leave me a comment or email me at catalystforchange20@gmail.com, or on Facebook, we have a page at Catalyst for Change Resiliency.